After 50 years of Assad's rule in Syria, after 50 years of oppression, tyranny, and the suppression of freedom, after 50 years of favoritism and corruption in the system, after 50 years of sectarian divisions and favoritism, Syria has finally freed itself from the disease that spread across every corner of its land. But the stories of injustice and suffering under this regime will likely continue for years and perhaps centuries. Stories of tyranny, oppression, slavery, humiliation, death, and suffering. The first story that has recently come to light is about the infamous human slaughterhouse, or the Red Prison, where the walls turned red with the blood of the 10 individuals who suffered unimaginable hardships behind those bars. We will talk about Sednaya Prison. Today, we will focus on the human and religious aspects. When you search for information about this prison on YouTube or news sites, you will find thousands of videos and articles. But in this video, we will not talk about politics. Instead, we will explore the human and religious aspects. Was this torture and mistreatment of the prisoners based on sectarian or religious beliefs? What does Islam teach about treating prisoners and captives? Through this video, we will share stories of people who survived from this prison and endured every form of torture. Then we will look at examples from Islamic histories about how Muslims and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, treated prisoners. The first story, Muhammad Sharif. Muhammad Sharif tells us that when we first entered the prison, there were around 100 of us. From the moment we entered, a prison officer ordered us to take off our clothes. We did as we were told, then were brutally beaten. Those who screamed in pain were taken out of the group and executed. This forced us to endure the beatings and torture in absolute silence. Of the 100 people, only 17 survived. Some died due to severe beating, while others were executed because they screamed. We were then placed into a cell where for the first 20 days there was no water. After 20 days, we heard the sound of a few drops of water coming from the bathroom tap. My friend and I rushed to drink whatever we could just to stay alive. Due to the extreme lack of water, we even resorted to urinating in a plastic bowl and drinking from it. Many prisoners died from severe dehydration. We didn't even know how time passed. Every morning, a voice would come and shout through the cells, asking, "Do you have any corpses? Any carcasses?" Dehumanizing us in the worst possible way. That was how we knew a new day had started. Even food was given only to keep us barely alive. So we continue witnessing more torture and suffering. One time, a guard hit me on the back, and the injury left me paralyzed for a month and a half. I was only released from prison after my mother-in-law managed to pay a high-ranking officer a bribe of $100,000. The second story, Muhammad Khadr al-Ali. Muhammad Khadr al-Ali was a fuel seller. One day, as people were protesting against the regime, he was returning from work and saw an injured man on the ground, shot by the regime's forces. Muhammad tried to help the man, but the Assad regime arrested him and imprisoned him in Sednaya Prison for 10 years. During these 10 years, he suffered extreme torture. He experienced electric shocks through his tongue and another part of his body. He sat on an iron chair with fire beneath it. He was beaten with various weapons, including metal rods, wooden sticks, and cables. There was even a woman in the prison who was about to give birth. They brutally cut her open with a saw, took out the baby, and then dismembered it. The food was so scarce that 4 people would share a single egg every day. Out of extreme hunger, they even resorted to eating insects, roaches, and flies. The brutality and motivation behind the torture. These stories are just a glimpse of the thousands that have come to light after the regime fell. Even the account of how they disposed the deceased prisoners are horrific. Some corpses were crushed using a special machine to reduce their size to about 1 kilogram, placed in plastic bags and buried in mass graves. There were even machines that shredded bodies to save space because the sheer number of deceased prisoners was overwhelming. The motivation behind this brutality was not religious, but driven by sectarian loyalty and a desire for power. They believed they were superior, holding power and authority, and that ordinary people who sought basic rights were expendable. This drive was about preserving their positions and power, which were supposed to serve people, but instead became tools for oppression and silencing dissent. What does Islam teach about treating prisoners? In Islam, harming prisoners, even in the smallest way, is strictly prohibited. Instead, Muslims are instructed to treat captives with kindness and respect. Muslims should not beat, starve, or torture prisoners, nor should they leave them exposed to the sun or cold, put them in cages, or use crucial punishments. Instead, they must show mercy, provide food, and treat captives with compassion and care. There are many examples from Islamic histories that show how Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, treated prisoners with mercy. Prophet Muhammad's mercy toward prisoners. One well-known story is about Syria ibn Assad, the leader of the Banu Hanifa tribe. When he was captured and tied to a post in the mosque, Prophet Muhammad visited him and asked, "What do you have, Syria?" Syria replied, "If you kill someone with blood on his hands. If you show kindness, it will be to someone who is grateful. And if you seek wealth, ask for it." After 3 days, Prophet Muhammad freed Syria. Syria then washed himself, accepted Islam, and said, "Your faith, which was once the most hated to me, has now become the most beloved. Your religion, which I once despised, is now the once I embarrass. Your city, which I once avoided, is now dear to me." The historical treatment of prisoners in battle. Another example is after the Battle of Badr, where 70 enemy captives were taken. Prophet Muhammad showed mercy by deciding not to kill them, accepting ransoms from those who could pay, and he told the prisoners who could read and write that they could redeem themselves and be released from captivity by teaching 10 illiterate Muslims. Even the famous enemy leader Suhail ibn Amr was shown respect instead of humiliation. Prophet Muhammad forbade any act that would degrade or insult the enemy. As stated in the Quran, they feed food to the needy, the orphan, and the captive, saying, "We feed you only for the sake of Allah. We seek neither reward nor thanks." Conclusion. From all these examples, we see how Islam teaches compassion, respect, and mercy in dealing with captives, prisoners, and even enemies. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, emphasized kindness and mercy, even for the most difficult opponents, showing that justice and respect should be central to dealing with all people. I hope this message and the examples I have shared give you a clear understanding of Islam's message of justice and mercy for all humanity. See you in the next video. Stay safe and in Allah's protection.